So we're going to be talking about the 7 beginner common mistakes that we should try to avoid. Now, the first mistake that actually happens all the time is we play with the same piece too many times at the beginning of the game. Now, in the beginning of the game, it is actually a race to develop all your pieces, and that's our second principle, development. But sometimes I see that we move our pieces like this. For example, if the knight goes to g5, it is putting pressure on these two pawns, but it's actually not really doing much. Both of those pawns are well protected. And if black moves their pawn to here, attacking our knight, we have to move the knight again. So if we move the knight back, so far it's been only 5 moves in the game, and we already played with this knight 1, 2, and 3 times. So this is going to be time not really well used. You can actually instead move your bishops out. You can try to do a castle. We can try to use this time much more effectively. Now, the second mistake that we do quite a lot in the game is moving the queen out too early. And this is in fact what we know as a scholar's mate. And if black tries to defend against it well, black is going to be developing a lot of pieces while preventing the checkmate. For example, right now, white can no longer do this checkmate. And if we look, even though white plays at the beginning of the game, first, right now they only developed 2 minor pieces, while black developed 3 minor pieces. And white wasted time with the queen by going once and twice like this. The main reason why we don't move the queen is, at the beginning of the game, because queen is so valuable, whatever attacks it, unless it's a queen, we have to move the queen back again. So that's going to cost us a lot of time, and we call this tempo in chess. Okay, so the third principle is going to be exposing your king. Now, the third principle that we learned before is actually the protection principle, right? So for example, let's say there's a game like this. Whoops. And then black moves their bishop to here. And now we bring our rook to e1. So far, it is a nice game. Everything is equal. And in this position, black moves their bishop to capture our knight. Now, if this happens, we have 2 options to capture that bishop with. We can use our queen, or we can use the pawn. And capturing with the queen is going to be better because not only we are saving our pawn structure, we're also bringing the queen into the game now. And right now, it is much safer for the queen to get out because we developed so many other pieces. It is now time to move the rooks, move the queen out. There are some ways that black can still attack our queen, but this is a general idea. Now, if you actually capture this with the pawn, this might seem like a good move, but it's actually not very good. And the reason is, look at our king. Right now, the pawn's protecting the king. There's actually a giant hole in front of this king. So the opponent in the future can try to bring their queen somehow on the g file, maybe their rook on the g file, and they can even push the pawns to do a pawn storm. That's why exposing your king is something we definitely should avoid. And there are a lot of simple moves that we can do that is going to save the king. So everybody, the fourth common mistake to avoid is actually not moving an attacked piece because it is being protected by your own piece. Now, there are some cases, of course, if it's going to be an equal exchange, you don't have to move it, but focus on this white bishop on c4 right now. In our game, sometimes we think that, oh, this bishop is protected by this d3 pawn, so we don't really need to move this bishop away. But in fact, if the opponent captures us with this pawn, we are going to be losing 3 points, while we will only be getting 1 point as we get the opponent's pawn. So whenever your piece is attacked by something less valuable, And if your piece is not protected, you should definitely move it away. If your piece is attacked by something that is the same value as your piece, and your piece is protected, then you may not have to move your piece away. But right now, if your opponent is attacking your bishop, we definitely should save that bishop by moving it out of this pawn's reach. So that's going to be the fourth common mistake that we should try to avoid. Now everybody, the fifth mistake is going to be actually losing tempo. And you might not even think this is a big deal, but if you actually add up these moves in your whole game, we can actually use these opportunities to do some better moves. For example, let's say the opponent moves the pawn to d6. This is what we call the Fildor's defense. And I see a lot of times that our bishop goes to b5 to do a check to the black king. Even though we are doing a check, and it might seem like a good idea, this is actually going to cost us time, as black can move their pawn to c6. Now we moved our bishop once, but because the opponent is attacking our bishop, and we just talked about this common mistake just a second ago, now we have to move our bishop. If not, the opponent is going to be capturing us with the pawn, right? So don't do moves like defending your bishop with a pawn, because it doesn't really matter. The opponent's getting 3 points, they're getting your bishop, and we are getting a tiny little pawn. So because of this, everybody, we are actually going to be needing to move this bishop, and now the opponent can even try to attack our bishop like this, and all this time we were moving this bishop, and the opponent is already making a pawn attack over the queen side. So when you are moving your pieces, try to see whether you can actually not lose tempo when you place them. Now everybody, the number 6 common mistake to avoid is actually ignoring the opponent's plans. So of course when we play a game, we want to win the game, but of course the opponent also wants to win the game. Now just right now, the opponent brought their queen to f6, and whenever your opponent makes a move, we should actually take some time to think, why do they do that move? What is their plan? Is there anything they're trying to do? Now, this might seem like it is just protecting the knight, but there's actually a bigger threat by moving this queen to f6. Now, white has the choice of capturing either the bishop or the knight. And you can choose to capture this bishop, which is going to be a very good idea. But if you choose to capture this knight, you might think, oh, the opponent can just capture us back. You would be correct, they can do that. However, there's actually a bigger threat the opponent was doing, and that's actually a checkmate. So whenever you have a plan, whenever the opponent makes a move, make sure to think how the opponent's move is going to relate with your own plan. Right? We need to calculate, we need to take a second to think. Don't play too fast. And that's something we should definitely avoid. Now, the 7th common mistake we should try to avoid is not looking at the whole board. In this position, we might try to do maybe like a ladder checkmate by moving our rook to there, moving our king away, and then somehow bringing the other rook to h2. And that's going to be a nice idea. So a lot of times what happens in games is you only focus over this side of the board. Right? You only focus on this side. And you avoid looking at the whole board, all 64 squares. And the reason why we should look is moving the rook to g1 is actually going to be a mistake. It's going to be a blunder, as the opponent has a bishop that is tucked away a little bit far. So if that happens, we are going to be losing this rook. And now our plan doesn't work. So we definitely, before you make your move, look at all of the squares on the chessboard to see whether your plan is not going to work because maybe the opponent has some pieces that can try to attack you.